Okay,
So we're good.
we're good?
Yep.
Great.
Oh, we're missing Nataki, but we do have a quorum.
All right. I'm going to start us then, it being 5 o'clock.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Emily Simon, and I want to welcome you all to the meeting of the Social Equity and Racial Justice Commission. I'm glad that we could start promptly because we promptly end at 6:30 to the best of our ability. The first thing on our agenda tonight is for Ann Seltzer to do the roll call of the individuals who are present. Ann, could you please do that?
Amit? Didn't I see you? There you are. Anya?
Here.
Nataki, no.
Here.
No, Taki's here.
Oh, where are you? Oh, there you are. Hi. Sherry?
Here.
Julie?
Here.
Precious?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
Keith? Here.
Here.
Tamara?
Here.
And Emily.
I am here.
Great.
Okay. The next item is a welcome and an introduction from Ann Cowden, who actually joined us 2 months ago, I believe, but then had technical problems. So we never got to get an introduction of Ann and just a little bit about her background and why she's on the commission, as the rest of us had the opportunity to do. So Ann, we look forward to hearing from
What
you.
would you like to know?
Well, why don't we start with just give us a little bit about your background, please, and why you decided to join this august
Oh,
group.
I like that. Okay. I spent over 40 years either working in the public sector or teaching. Most of that time as a professor at California State University, Sacramento, which was excellent. I'm a political scientist by training, as well as public administration, which is the action arm of political science, the implementation arm. I worked for the city of Los Angeles. I worked for the California legislature as a budget analyst. I've been a manager, a writer, I publish things, a consultant with government. I'm a mom of one child. I've lived in Ashland about 5 years, and I'm basically a Californian in every other way. So that's me.
And how come you joined the commission?
I guess as much as anything because at my age, I was the first woman to do many things, creating diversity. I went to UCLA when they'd only allowed 10 women in the history of the poli-sci department, or 3 women in the history of the poli-sci department, and I was part of the 10 and the 2 African Americans they let in that year in 1966. And I dated men of color and found out a good deal about prejudice and other things. I then went on and worked for the city of LA, and then I went and got my doctorate at USC, where I worked as a manager as well as teaching. I created a class in the 1980s in diversity and management at Sac State to re-educate myself, so that my students would, at that time, Sacramento was the most diverse city in the country. And my classrooms very much reflected that, from people who were newly immigrated from anywhere in the world to just living in Sacramento. So I lobbied to get a diversity and management course, and I taught that until I retired. And again, it was my re-education, so much that had been left out of my learning, my textbooks, my whatever. So I've always been interested in diversity, and the lesbian, actually bisexual most of my life, but identify as a lesbian now. And I feel that as an other, I can understand at least a little bit about what it's like to be an other that I don't share the same things with.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing all of that. It was actually quite inspirational, so thank you.
Thank you. And I'm also very retired. So if there's a lot of work to do, rely on me, please.
Music to my ears. Wonderful.
I love to write. I love to research. And again, I've been retired for a period of time. So give me stuff to do.
I think we can work with that.
Accommodate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ann.
My pleasure.
Okay. The next number is the approval of minutes from January 13th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Sherry moves
I
to
move.
amend the. Tamara, are you seconding?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I'm double checking to make sure that there's not public input that you received.
No public input.
Okay, thank you. Anya is going to take over on the next part of our meeting. We have representatives today from two separate groups, from the Interfaith Council and from the City of Medford's Commission for Access, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I just want to make a comment before Anya takes over. On the agenda, what we did, rather than having folks just be public input because of the constraints with public input, according to Oregon statutes and according to the Ashland Municipal Code, what we did instead was we made them actually part of the agenda. So the significance of that is that will allow all of you to interact with them for questions, concerns, so that it can be more of a conversation between us, as it were, and them, as it were. Not that there should be an us and a them, may we all be one. But nonetheless, I just wanted to give that background. So Anya, could you take it from here, please?
Sure. Welcome, you all. So I'm seeing Richard and Martha and looks like Rosemary and Judy. And so welcome here with all of us. And I'm interested to hear who you are and what you are doing in terms of the work in your respective spaces. And I will just kind of have you popcorn, and I guess I will begin with Judy because that's who I see to my immediate left.
Thank you. Well, I'm afraid I went to one interfaith council and they said, why don't you go to this meeting?
You got voluntold.
So basically I've come to kind of see what you're all about. And I know that the Interfaith Council is thinking about doing some kind of conference on social equity and racial justice. And I think that was one of the reasons they wanted to come and be part of this meeting, but the other person who was supposed to come didn't come this evening. So I'm just kind of here to observe and see what your work is all about.
Sure.
So thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome and thank you. And Rosemary.
Let me come off mute. Hi, thank you so much for having me today. I'm going to let Martha do most of our communication as our chair, but I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Rosemary Jernigan. I am part of the commission in Medford around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've always had a passion for this work. It started from a very, very little child recognizing my own privilege and wanting to do something around the disequity of how we as mankind can create division. So I am also here to observe the good work that you all are doing, and I recognize some of your faces, so it's good to see you all again. And I will let Martha do most of the the conversation piece. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay. I'm actually gonna, at request, move to Richard, and Richard, you can go, and then we'll move to Marta at her request. You're on mute, Richard, sorry.
I hit the wrong button, sorry. So yeah, my name is Richard. I am actually very, very new to our commission. This is the third time I've met in a group with anyone here. So the goings on and everything that we've been working on as a team, I am still trying to absorb and learn all of it. That being said, this is kind of a newfound passion for me. I work in the financial industry. I worked in a large company in Medford, and I definitely seen a lot of diversity and a lot of gaps, not only with our company, but also within the community that we serve. So that kind of really inspired me to move into this opportunity. And so I'm just very happy to have been chosen, and excited to learn and help out as best I can from here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having members of the KD Commission here today. Our commission really appreciates being able to say hello to our counterpart in our neighboring city. My name is Marta Terensei, and I am the chair of KD Commission for Access, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I have been in the Valley for about 5 years. I've been with the commission for about 5 years. I applied just after a couple of months of coming to Medford because I'm passionate about DEI issues, and I bring my perspective as an immigrant that I once was. And yeah, I wanted to share with you that you have an ally commission just 15 miles away, and that in the past, the city of Medford has been humbled and proud to co-sponsor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebrations here in the Valley. And some of the things our commission does and historically has done are pretty cool, and they're community driven, or the ideas are generated ideally outside of the commission. They either are generated in the community, who then brings ideas to us, or within the city. For the first 20-something years of its existence, our commission was known as the Multicultural Commission. And I would be doing a disservice to the previous iteration of the commission if I didn't highlight a project that could be of relevance, just as background context, for some of the things I saw in your draft report, because part of the agenda was your draft report to the city. And I want to highlight a project from 2014. Do I have permission to share my screen, please? I hope I can. Okay, thank you so much. So in 2014, as an outcome to a 2012 police incident in Medford with a Latino youth, the city of Medford undertook a Latino community relations project for the PD, and they involved Oregon Health Sciences University. They followed some amazing best practices and methodology, and the project involved improving public relations as well as taking into consideration what the community wanted in their relations with the Medford Police Department. So that was basically one of the projects that got me recruited or got my attention when I first applied to be on the commission, is projects like this that the commission in the past led on. That showed me I wanted to be aligned with it. And currently we are working on a collaboration with the Medford Arts Commission to see if a public space that's usually, when there is no pandemic, when it's open to the community as a meeting space, there is a beautiful empty wall. How can we collaborate with our sister city committee for the Alba sister city relationship and the Arts Commission to maybe bring an art piece there that celebrates that sister city relationship? When there was an RFP, request for proposals, for the Vogel Plaza mural downtown Medford, one of our commissioners, who's since retired, she was on the RFP review process. And most recently, when the city has committed to invest some of their community development block grant funding into a real DEI action plan, When I say real, I mean, they're obviously all real, but you know, the investment has been made. All members of Katie were invited to participate in the RFP review process as well. And we look forward to engaging to help bring more community feedback to inform that DEI action plan as part of the external focus of the consultants' work there. So yeah, thank you so much for having us. Those are the highlights of the past, present, and future work of ours.
All right.
If I miss something, I welcome, oh, pardon. If I miss something, I welcome Rosemary and Richard to chime in. I've been on the commission for 5 years, Rosemary on it for 2, I believe, and Richard is one of the more recent additions. So you have kind of all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet all of you. And I would just say that as we are finally in a process of moving work in the commission, the goal, I think I speak for everyone here, is for us to really do a deep dive around the relationship of equity work as it stands in the Valley, and making sure that we are putting forward initiatives that have teeth and that can actually move processes within the surrounding areas. And really the draft of what you saw, I think, is just a very high level first pass of that work, because we recognize that there are things that need to be implemented before we can get to actual DEI initiatives that that properly address the inequities, especially around race and gender and bias that exist. So we've got a lot of work cut out for us. I think we're all excited on the commission to finally see, we're at the draft stage. Everybody has read and you know, given their input. And so we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're excited about the work. And it's nice meeting all of you. So for the next, Emily, did you want me to move on? Did you want to talk a little bit about engagement of other commissions? And you know, I think we're at a space of circling back with our visitors when we have a more established approval of that draft, when it is an actually implemented process, and we can, you know, circle back with you and talk about shared work and responsibility at that point. You're muted, Emily. You're muted, sorry.
I said, I do have some questions that I'd like to ask these folks while they're here so that we can learn from them and get a sense as to what's going on with their respective organizations.
Sure.
So Judy, can you tell us what is the Interfaith Council and tell us a little bit about it, even though I understand you got a sort of, shall we say, perhaps roped in a little bit to being here. Maybe you could tell us what the Interfaith Council is, what you do, what kind of stuff you've looked at. And you're muted.
I can't tell you a lot because I've only gone to one of their meetings. But I'm really truly a newbie. But my understanding is that they represent different faith groups in the Valley. And they're an ecumenical organization. And they're very interested in, I think, social justice issues and reaching out to the community in many different ways. To, you know, help wherever they can. And but I'm not the best person to tell you all about their programs, unfortunately. So I apologize for that, but.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Marta, I was very intrigued by your comment about the investment in the RFP and the DEI action plan. So has Medford actually spent money? Is there a budget item? Is there a person in Medford city government who is tasked with doing DEI work? How does that work in Medford? And I do want to remind people who aren't talking to mute themselves and people who are talking to unmute themselves.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, I don't have the budget figure right in front of me. I remember it from the RFP review proposal. There was a range. So the city of Medford was releasing an RFP with a budget limit of a particular range. And yes, I believe that investment already started happening to have the consultant work start, because the consultants already, I believe, visited here at least once or had virtual meetings. So the work is underway. That said, the city of Medford does not have on staff internally in-house a DEI matters position. I noticed that one of your focal points is, a creation of a DEI manager, a position that focuses on that within the city. And that was just fascinating and amazing to see. In my past, I've worked in the Portland area with cities that have made that internal organizational investment. Right now, this is that profound deep dive guided by a consultant to see what it is that the city needs to do. And I look forward to the findings that will tell the city of Medford as to how to best internally implement and what to perhaps change to align better with the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you. I think, oh wait, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marta.
I wanted to also say the city has also invested, as they went through the Vision 2040 or Medford 2040 vision process, in a consultant that, alongside the organizational consultant, focused on community outreach. And for the third time that Community 2040 vision plan went back out to the public, the group and the consultant knew they needed to hear from more people, and we're very proud to respond or to report that because of the collaboration between that public outreach consultant and several members of the Katie group, including Commissioner Jernigan, who's on the call. It would not have been possible without her, and co-chair Velasquez, who couldn't make it tonight. Everybody's zoomed out right now, right? People are zoomed out. There's survey fatigue. Well, for the third survey that group had sent out, they got more responses than for the second one. And without that consultant coming to us saying, hey, we need to hear from more people and more voices and more groups, that would not have been possible. So even on something else the city was working on, they invested in a community outreach consultant that had a DEI outreach hat without, their job title explicitly saying that. Thank you.
Ann, I think you wanted to say something.
Hi, Marta, I'm Ann. I'm the staff liaison to the commission. Just to clarify, so the participation that the commission had in the request for proposals, the RFP, was specifically for a consultant to evaluate, determine whatever the specific needs or progress would be for DEI involvement in Medford. Can you tell me the name of that consultant?
I don't remember which one was selected, and so far they've just had meetings with the city. I'm blanking on it right now. We're scheduled hopefully to meet with them in late February or March.
And when do you anticipate their that consultant's report to be submitted to the city? Do you know?
I believe fall, like end of summer or early fall, was the project timeline for that deliverable. But I can actually get back to you on that happily. It was a really nice and transparent process where anybody on Katie was welcome to join the RFP review team. That was really, really good.
I know that we would be interested in certainly seeing the deliverable in the fall. Also knowing who was selected. I'm kind of keeping tabs on consultants that other Oregon cities have used for this same thing. So I'd be curious to know that. And tell me why you're called the KD group.
Thank you. Commission for Access, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Okay.
Just that name. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I should point out that our city sidekick, Bonnie Barash, I just don't see her on the Zoom squares. She provided in chat the name of the consultant that was selected. So
Okay.
Bonnie, thank you so much for being there. We couldn't do what we do without the City of Medford's assistance.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Emily.
I want to actually raise one level what Marta just said. Is it possible, Marta and or Bonnie, for you to send us a copy of that RFP so that we could look at it?
I'm going to defer to Bonnie in chat. My personal opinion is that it's public record, so I don't see why we wouldn't, but I'm going to ask Bonnie to chime in chat.
Okay.
Bonnie is reporting that she will get back to the group.
And can you also clarify that this is the Kaleidoscope group out of Chicago, Illinois? If that's the group, would you all clarify for us if that's who you're speaking of, or if they are a local group? Thank
Bonnie,
you.
is it? Yeah, good.
Oh, yes, it is them. Okay, thank you.
Great. Yeah, it would be really helpful to look at it and the numbers. And can you tell us, I know I heard you about the outreach and the assistance that the City of Medford gave you to for the outreach. Can you tell us other ways in which you've either interacted with the City of Medford, or if you have made any suggestions for their ED&I work within the city government itself?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So far, we have been the outward-facing group. We are looking forward to seeing the recommendations in the report by the consultant. I'm going to make a small correction. When it came to the 2040 vision, we were the group that helped City with their outreach. So that was great. We have worked on doing outreach with other cities, boards, and commissions. And for the first time ever, the city's Park and Rec department approached us with a copy before it went to print of the Parks and Rec offerings and asked us for feedback. And so the feedback we gave was, hey, some of this content in Spanish could use more real estate, publicize, the scholarship opportunities more widely, even at the risk of them running out sooner, and feedback on doing larger print. So the communication is with the city. So we work with the city closely. Our city sidekicks, like Bonnie and staff liaisons, they're there at every meeting. The city's public works department was super helpful in helping us figure out how to do the public art project in a conference room space. We talk to the city a lot, but we have not looked internally because we're waiting to see where the DI action plan lands.
Okay. I do have one more question for you. I was aware of the Multicultural Commission and have been for quite some time in terms of the events that were put on in Medford. And I viewed it perhaps incorrectly, and I think that's where my question is going, Marta. I viewed it as more as a producer of events than as a working group. And if you could, I heard what you said about the 2014 Latino community health sort of survey. When do you think that the group became more of a working group, and what was your initial focus when you started on that?
Great question. Full disclosure, I was not with the group back then. I just wanted to share a really great community project that came out of the work of the group. I wouldn't be able to tell you when the focus of the group shifted. However, that is a clarification we have to make for a lot of people in our community, including city councilors. The group behind the events, namely the Multicultural Fair, is done by the group Friends of the Multicultural Fair. And for a long time, the two groups overlapped incredibly. And while Katie, individually, the members can step in and help with the Friends of the Multicultural Fair, we've had to, clarify it for city council. And so I don't know when the shift happened. I know that ever since I joined 5 years ago, it has been a work group. We'll listen to the community feedback and we answer questions, and on some things we can't answer questions. I will share with you that the commission discussed the best way to engage in the renaming of the Memorial Road outside of Ashland. And then it was determined that because the city does not have jurisdiction overlap, but that's what the community members and a member of the commission wanted us to, work on, but that wasn't ultimately the charge of the commission. It didn't then align with our goals. We have since revised our goals. It has been a work group for as long as I've been on it.
I also think that, and again, this may be better directed to Bonnie, that I, for one, would very much like to see the goals that you have and your, I guess I would say your establishment documents, okay? Not to sound too much like a lawyer, but the city ordinance that created you, as well as, and then this is just a question, how are the commissioners selected?
Thank you, and we're happy to share the part of the charter that defines what we do as well as our goals. Every board and commission recruits in January. The applications are open to the entire community. Eligibility criteria, the only two are the applicants must live in Medford or work in Medford, I believe, or yes. That's about it. Residency or working. And then the chair and the vice chair, together with the city liaison and the city council liaison, conduct interviews, confer, and nominate to the city council the appointments.
Marta, how can we help you? Medford is a bigger city than we are, more diverse population, and flinging my cards on the table, I think is perhaps a more honest and upfront city than Ashland can be. Again, flinging my cards on the table. Please forgive me, my fellow commissioners, for that. Do you know what I mean, Marta? How can we work together? How can we help you?
I'll also ask the other fellow commissioners on the call to chime in a moment, but one is information sharing. It was amazing to read your draft report because you are going after the level of depth and engagement with your city that we're on track to getting to, I'd like to believe. And secondly, I think when it comes to practicality, we can access economies of scale. If the city of Medford identifies a training opportunity, maybe the one that we recommend, but can we have city staff from both cities attend training sessions at a cost savings? We can build a greater shared understanding of matters of DEI among municipal workers if we align our efforts, as well as communities too. Maybe it's you and I attending a shared training together. I don't know, but it starts with us talking, just like this. Maybe that was really vague, and I apologize. I'll ask if Rosemary or Richard have any feedback.
I appreciate the question so much. I think that it starts with today, just the invitation to understand the work that you all are doing. I really appreciate the idea that we can collaborate, that we can be in partnership, that you will challenge us when perhaps we may not be doing what needs to be happening in Medford, and vice versa. I think that just being able to be mindful that this work is ongoing and there's growth that needs to take place, and just knowing the expertise that is here at this table. I know that I'm in the 35 minutes that I've been with you all. I recognize that there's a lot of experience and a wealth of knowledge that
I, for one, want to steal and take advantage of. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. I think I'm feeling that you folks are nicely ahead of us and that we should be working together.
And Richard, you unmuted.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly what we're going to be able to do. But I've learned, because I work in basically every city in our valley, Ashland very frequently, and if I've learned anything just from the people that I work with, it's that you're significantly better off if we work together. And I think that this is just another example of an opportunity for us to share ideas and the thought processes. And I might be wrong on this, but while Medford might be larger and a more diverse community, I think the expectations from the community are probably higher for Ashland, just because I guess the stereotype that Ashland is a more diverse community, and it's a college town and all that. So I would imagine that we can work together in that way as well, and just like we might have more resources available because we're larger, and if we could share those kind of things with Ashland, and you guys could share your additional knowledge with us, I think that's just it's the best thing for both of us.
Thank you very much. I think that anything that between Marta and Bonnie that you could forward to Ann Seltzer as our staff liaison for distribution would be very, very helpful for us to look at as we go forward together and see where we can join forces.
Gina?
Thank you, Anya. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I was tardy. But Marta, I have a question. Can you let me know who your council liaison is?
Yes, our counselor liaison is Counselor Kevin Stein.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your time and for coming and for sharing the work that you're doing. I think we are, like I said, we have a lot ahead of us. And when we get the documents, I do know the consulting firm that you all are working with. I know many of their consultants. So it's interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see the report that they bring to Medford. And we'd be interested in seeing that when it's made available publicly. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll, I think, follow up as we continue to do the work and stay in communication. So Emily, are you ready to move to your draft report, to the meat of the moment?
Yes, and I won't make any motions referencing the meat. Now, I do want to make a comment or two before I take general comments about the report, and I'm anticipating that everybody in the room has read it. So it's quite a long document, and I really don't think that the best use of time is me reading it or going over it. However, if there is somebody who has a particular question about a section of the report and or doesn't understand something that was in there or is concerned about it, I think that I would very much appreciate having a discussion about it in that way, because it is fairly broad and covers different areas. Anne, I would ask that you take any notes here on this in case the report gets changed in substance in some way, as opposed to editorial comments. And I'm going to come back to those in just a minute. Okay, so questions, comments, discussion about any portion of this, and or does anybody feel like I need to go over it more in detail? Anya.
So not go over it more in detail. I think, you know, we've all had an opportunity to read it and give our input and thoughts behind it. But what I will say is I think that it is extremely well written. I think it is extremely directed, clear. I think that it, you know, even in draft form, the first pass was something that is telling of where we are trying to go as a commission. I think that it addresses, you know, aspects of what it's going to mean to stand up the rest of this work in a real way. Often commissions come together and people start trying to kind of attack the things that need to be done with no structure. And I think the way that we as a commission came together to really plot out this, the movement of how the work needs to happen, that you clearly listened, Emily, to the back and forth and us trying to figure it out, and documented a system in which we will be better partners to both the city and to the people of Ashland. Because I think otherwise we would have wound up in a position where we may have by default disbanded without some clear goal. So for me, I'm appreciative. I'm really grateful and thankful of the way that you crafted this and of the feedback that we've gotten thus far. And I just want to pat you all on the back and say, this is almost unheard of to get here in such a short amount of time. I have watched these things play out and take a year, take 3 years of back and forth around language. And we were more focused on content and need than picking at each other about the language. So congratulations. I know it's a draft, a final, but I think it's very well written and very clear.
Thank you, Anya. Anybody else have any, as I always say, questions, comments, criticism, kudos, complaints? Sherry.
Just to what Anya said as well, just that it's so well written and all the work. And I also was really thrilled to see that we got to the meat of things so quickly, especially when it felt like we were just not getting going. So thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. The Hebrew expression is gaviyati. It means it flows through me, and it's meant to be to express your humility. So thank you, I appreciate it. Are there other comments, questions? And does anybody else have their hand up and I just can't see them? Okay. I have a couple of questions and a couple of points to make because the commission, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be asking the commission to, of course, to know me is to know that when I got this back, I read it again. So of course I have found some additional editorial things that I wish to add in, none of which are substantive, but 2 of which I do want to point out and ask a question about, where it talks about, we suggest the funds used for salaries for staff that have left the city be allocated for this new position. I think it reads better, and this is slightly substantive, so bear with me while I play this out. I think that it should be, we suggest the city, the funds used for the salaries for unfilled staff positions be allocated for this new position. Because I think it's broader than just people who have left the city. And I know Gina wants to say something. And I'm just looking for broader language that could potentially get us there so that we don't get into this budget fight that I know we will be getting to. Gina, and then Ann.
I was thinking when putting this suggestion out that it would be full-time employees because some people have left and these people are part-time. but we want to take these full-time FTEs, full-time employees' money and reallocate those funds to a DEI manager. So I think that's important to have that little bit in there.
Okay, Ann,
Sorry, Emily, I just want to make sure that I'm looking, so I'm page 2. Can you tell me specifically the page and the paragraph?
it's
So
page, the way in which I printed out, it's the last sentence in page 3 of 7. And we don't really need to wordsmith this to death, because I'm going to send to you
Okay,
my other corrections that I've
Okay.
got, that are small, that I don't need to talk to people about.
okay.
Um,
So I'll just wait for you to send me what your
Right,
rewording
right.
is.
right, and Gina, I'm gonna tell you why I disagree with you in just a minute, but first I'm gonna let Anya go.
Go ahead, Emily, you go first.
Okay, Gina, here's where I disagree with you. I have been getting feedback from people, and again, this is in full disclosure department, that the first question that I think we're going to get from the city, and I think this is true anyway, is couldn't it be a part-time position? We have money for a part-time position to get us started. And I see you shaking your head and saying, no, it needs to be a full-time position. And I can also think that there's 2 different ways that we can go about this. I think it's really important that in terms of our credibility with the city of Ashland, that we are working with the entire city council. And I know that there are certain people on the city council who are going to read that our first ask out of the box is for a full-time employee, and they will just not respond very well to the other parts. So without designating full-time or part-time, if we keep it broad, then during the discussion part, when either Anya gets asked the question or I get asked the question, and I'm anticipating it'll be me because this is my thing here, I can then say that we believe it needs to be a full-time position.
I hear you, Emily, and I understand you. And of course, you're going to get pushback. However, I was thinking that the funds from the people who are no longer in those positions, there's been people who were part-time and people who were full-time. So when asking to take these funds and reallocate them elsewhere, you don't have to put that in there. You can say it later, or you can imply that. But I come from a place of ask for the moon and the stars and you get the stars. You know, I don't want to dumb it down.
Okay.
I want to bring it up, and then we have some wiggle room in there. It's the salesperson in me. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think sure you're going to get pushback, but it's the commission's thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm where when later on we ask for a full-time person and we give the salary range. So it's not as if it's not in there for a full-time person.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, we say later on in the actual recommendation, we say for a full-time in the amount of person. I just don't want to get we don't have the money for this, when you could take 2 half-time people and maybe put it together.
Yeah, okay, I understand. You don't need to put that in there. And I also like the suggestion that Marta gave also, you know, so it's on the commission.
What do you mean?
I like what Marta said earlier about working together. But that's another situation.
Right. Sherry.
I just want to make sure I'm following this clearly, because I feel like I'm hearing 2 different answers or questions. There's a question of are we looking for full-time versus part-time manager? And I understand Emily wanting to be able to say that more verbally rather than risk somebody reading it and being like, forget it. There's also, though, the question of how do we fund it? And to me, I would also keep that open because Emily, you just said it, 2 half-time people equal 1 full-time person. I see Anya shaking her head, so I don't have the background in this. So explain explain what I'm missing so that I understand it.
So I don't know, and this is the thing about reading someone's work when they're brainsmithing and wordsmithing this, right? So what I did is I took a very objective approach to what Emily wrote, knowing that it was going to be edited both by all of us, and then there will be edits when it is presented, because there will be volleying back and forth. That said, let me, and I'm just gonna clearly for everyone state, as an equity officer, where I lay on this topic, you do not hire somebody to do racial equity or social justice work at a part-time position. It will cause the person in the position undue harm, period. And I can send 8 million documents about how and why, and I'm happy to furnish that to the commission and to the council. But the other thing is, Gina just mentioned something that sounds like a good collaborative idea, but is a recipe for failure. Sharing somebody across jurisdictions is problematic as well, because it gets overly politicized. People have different focuses and concerns in different cities. We know that. Medford may have an agenda for something specific. Ashland may have an agenda for something specific, and that person having to hold the responsibility of those two spaces is not only problematic, but it's deeply, deeply unfair if the work of the commission, if the work we are suggesting is to support the city and that person's work. Because what the commission should eventually mature to be is a repository for any of those issues that happen, that we've helped work through those issues and made community thought processed, recommendations, not just what the commission wants, but what the community comes to the commission and says, hey, you did this initiative and it's not landing in the way that we need, right? And so there's a space there. So if the language, which I see that it does, of the document says at some point full time, what we ask for, and this is where I agree with you, Gina, is ask for the moon and the stars and the galaxy. And if you only get a few planets and some stars, then hey. But I think 2 things that are really going to be critical is there is the money or the FTE to fund the position itself, just the position. And then there is the money that the city is going to have to make a determination and a decision around for the work that has to be done. I get paid to do equity work. I have a budget for that work. And this person as a manager is not going to have enough in their budget as one employee to then ameliorate the issue. So let's just refocus for a minute, everyone, and think about how we even came to this recommendation of this document. And one of the things that came up, right, was to do conciliatory services. So remember how I keep harping on this and going back to, if the manager is in place and conciliatory services are built, the manager can't do conciliatory services and DEI work at the same time, right? So what's going to happen is, by the nature of complaints, by the nature of the work itself getting started, you're going to need an FTE and support. And that support may be consultants. It may be a position in the city that already exists. It may be a position that sits between the mayor, the city manager, and the city attorney, because some of the things that get brought forward are going to be legal in nature, which Emily and I have, there's been discussion around that. So I think if you have it, as you have it, not if, in the document already, Emily, as full-time, keep expressing it as full-time. I would not wordsmith that apart.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
I know exactly how to fix this.
Okay.
That takes into account what everybody is saying, and I really appreciate that. I'm sorry, Anya, I don't mean to be cutting you off.
No, you're fine. You're fine. That was my point,
Okay.
was just make sure that the ask is consistent both in the document and both in the conversation, because getting a manager is a very finite and small piece of the puzzle. Because even if the city tomorrow was, flush with resource, the assumption that someone, listen, my last equity budget was millions of dollars. It took me and a team of people to address the equity issues. So one FTE does not solve the SERJ need, is my point. So be expansive in the ask, be clear in the ask, and then as we involve these other teams of people that we want to work with, be clear about the commission will need to also create a container for how we work across Medford and other places, so that we are very, very clear about those things.
Anya, I am not bringing up, and I'm saying this in as strongly words as I can, Gina, and I want you to hear me on this. I am not bringing up collaborating with the city of Medford on this issue in the document. And I think to do that is a mistake, because it gives the commission here, it gives the city council a reason not to
No, that was
fund
not
this.
my suggestion. That was just me talking.
Okay.
Okay, that's,
Emily, Sherry
gotcha.
has her hand up.
Sherry, I
Yeah.
see your hand. I know, I see Sherry's hand. I'm just gonna finish my thought because I've got this and I know exactly how to do it. It's to say, where we're talking about a new position, to make it consistent, is to say a new full-time position. And then I can pick up the language of take money from wherever you need it, but use it as a full-time position. And then it makes it consistent across the document. So I think this was a really worthwhile conversation to have. I think I've got it. And I think I can fix it fairly easily, and will send it to Ann if people will trust me to do that. Okay, Sherry.
I think your last little bit answered my question, and that was if I was not speaking clearly, if it felt like the suggestion I was making that it be a part-time person, I understand and completely agree. It's got to be full-time. The sentence that Emily had pointed us to initially was the sentence that says, how do we get the money for this person? And that's where I was saying, don't say we're only getting money from full-time staff positions that aren't there anymore. And I think, Emily, in your last bit, you that's what you clarified, is get the money from any place you need to get the money from.
Right.
Right.
To make this, to fund this full-time position. And like Anya said, the money that they're going to need to do the work, because a DEI manager can't do anything without support or a budget. They're just sitting in and, they won't be able to do anything.
Yeah, and I think just to clarify, I heard your question, Sherry, as expansive as it was. It wasn't an either or, it was how are we, having the discussion about, is it part-time or not? And I think as you're thinking about the question, Emily, how do we get the money? I think maybe it's a recommendation, rather than a question of how. I think the recommendation is asking the city to fund the position and the needs that it will, and the supportive services for the position. Because that's not an either or, that's a both and. That's saying we need an FTE for the position and the ability to actualize the work, which could be in the form of consultants for the first year. It could be many things. I think the danger, I'll say this and then I'd love to hear what other people think, the danger in not challenging around this issue is what happens often is we assume that the equity director can hold all of the things. And it is such a failed approach to take around the work. And I don't want to set somebody up to fail. I want to set somebody up to be successful so that the commission can be successful, so that when we ask the equity person to actualize things, they have the capacity, the bandwidth, the funding, and finally, we can hold them accountable because we're fighting for this position for someone. They also are going to have to be accountable both to the commission, to the council, and to the city as a whole. So I think it's really, really important to ask in an expansive way. I'll be quiet. I see Nataki's hand.
Yeah, I want to just agree with you. I think it's really important to ask in an expansive way. If you think about, there are corporations that are smaller than our city that have DEI managers, and still that's not enough for the whole corporation that is utilizing and accessing the expertise of a DEI manager. So if you imagine that, exponentially across a town, as big as Ashland, and then if you think about if we were to share, so the thing that happens, I mean, when I was in education, we had one DEI manager for all of the whole thing, that everything that happened under the umbrella of the institute, that is California Institute of the Arts, and the issue was that they kept leaving because it becomes a repository for all of the terrible stories and bad things that happen. And there really isn't an opportunity to do real work and make substantive change in these areas. And so I think Medford should have theirs, we should have ours, and we might have to have an office of it eventually. I think, right now we're talking about hiring one person, but we're embarking on the possibility that if we really want substantive change, we actually have to have expertise across the board, and expertise that can handle it in HR, expertise that can handle it on these commissions, expertise that can handle it on an interpersonal level where people are meeting, on the streets, expertise with the police department, expertise across the board. So we'll start here, but I also want to make sure that we're hiring at the top level with the most amount of resource to get the best person into that position. So that we're not sort of looking at as a commission and the city, we want the city to also have the recommendation that, you really do have to resource this position. You have to resource it.
And Julie, I see your hand, and then Gina's. Can I jump in quickly though and say something that came to mind as Nataki was speaking? If you say utilizing funding, and I literally thought about this actually last night when I reread the document. If you say utilizing funding of existing positions, and those positions, the equity work comes at the cost of those positions, we're gonna have a problem. So I want us to think about that as well, right? So let's say there's 7 positions that are vacant, and we take the budget for the equity work. The city says, yeah, we have 7 positions. We'll take 3 and use that as the equity budget, and we'll take 1 FTE and use that for the full-time person. To me, that is in a way robbing. It's not just reallocating, right? We'll call it that, politically reallocating funds. But what happens when the narrative becomes you've cut city services to create this equity space? And that pits the equity space against the city and against the needs. And I think that's a critical conversation. And maybe Emily, as you're thinking of your rewrite, or not your rewrite, your edit, maybe there's a space in there, bolded, italics, to really think about for the city for a conversation. I didn't even think about that when we were doing edits. It literally just landed in this kind of discourse, and last night in me reading the budget ask, which I don't think is a ridiculous ask, but to be thinking about that, how does that undermine the equity work if the ask is to utilize positions that may still need to be filled later for the city? So just a thought. Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
Thank you for that, Anyanaya. First of all, I just want to concur with what has just been said is really my basic point. I think it's 100% on strategy and on point. And what you just said was great. And I agree with it 100%. So we should be expansive, and I'm in support of all the voices that have spoken on that tonight.
I just want to give a comment for how we got to this place before Gina talks, because then I do want Gina to talk. And it was the notion of, by the time they start doing the budget process, it's another, what, year, Gina, before they redo the budget. So the issue was, how can we say, you've got the money for this now, use the money in another way? And that's how all of this came up, and why when I raised this, it's because I was trying to say, as expansively as we possibly can, here is another bucket of money that you can use to get us started. And, you know, I have to tell everybody in this room, because I don't want to have perfect be the enemy of good. And I'm worried that we may be going down that pike in the following way. I think this is going to be a very, very heavy lift for the city of Ashland to go ahead and agree with this. I'm giving a dose of political reality from somebody who's been doing this for a long time, okay? And I think it's going to be a really heavy lift. And I think that we have to work with them in a way so that they can meet us and find us to start doing that lift. And I agree in terms of asking expansively and then potentially having a negotiation, Gina. I agree with that notion, but I also believe, and I believe this really strongly, that you've got to go in starting with something that people can agree to. So everybody's could say very easily, yeah, this is really important. Everything you're saying is really crucial, and we don't have the money, and goodbye. And I don't want that to happen. So I agree that we can say that it is crucial that the equity manager, whoever that person is, have enough resources to support him, her, or they in that job. But I think that if we go too deep into a document that is already 7 pages long with how we see it, after we make it really clear that we want to work with them, that we're not even going to get through the presentation. And I just really want to be blunt about that. Gina, Sherry first and then Gina. Sorry,
So-
Gina, I wanted to hear from you, and then Sherry bumps in.
Sorry. So sorry, Gina. So I hear what you're saying, Emily. So I mean, you can make that even just that sentence, you know, we suggest the funds used for salaries be reallocated, for staff that have left the city be reallocated for this new position. Even if you add something as simple to that as to carry us over till the new budget is created, that now you've said to them, here's a way you can fund it right now. So you don't have to tell us we can't do anything for the next budget, but we're not necessarily taking services away from the city, because we're saying in the next budget, we need to come up with it.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you. Okay. First Gina, then Ann. First Gina, then Ann Cowden, then Ann Seltzer.
No, let Ann Cowden go first, because she hasn't spoken. I'll go last. Go ahead.
I guess one of the concerns that I have about this whole discussion is our lack of data, our lack of real, is there money available? How much is it? Where is the city? Should we talk to the finance director? Should we talk to the new city manager? To talk to the structure of the city as to what's available. I have looked at the budget. This is the worst budget I have ever seen. And I've been a budget analyst for a long time. You can't find what's in there. That's the problem. You can't find line items. You can't find, that's a whole other thing. But I'm very concerned that I think it should be a full-time, but I'd like us to have more information. I don't know, Gina, if you can provide some of that as being on the council as to what kind of funding is available right now, what the tenor of the council is around something like this. I just would be curious to have more input from the people that we are going to interact with around these issues.
And I'm going to be really respectful here when I say this. I know I'm not supposed to use that, but I just think that in terms of my time and when this is due, and that we're presenting in front of the council, that I don't have the time to get all of those pieces put into place before this document goes. And the objective of this document is to start the conversation. So this document is due. This document is due on Tuesday, right? Ann Seltzer?
Yes, due on
Okay.
Tuesday.
It's due on Tuesday, and I had the rest of, there's only one or two other substantive things that we still have to discuss, and it's 6:11. So I think at some point here, I'm hearing what everybody is saying, but I need to get this document done, and I need to do it tomorrow because I'm not going to be in town Saturday through Tuesday. So without saying I'm not going to do this, what I am saying to people is, in terms of my time, we are at it. And I've heard everything that everybody has said, and I just want you to trust that I can try and, as you did with me before, that I can take everything that you've said and try and craft what the sense of the body is, but we've got to get something submitted. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I guess what I was trying to say is maybe in the future, we should gather more information so we can answer some of our own questions and get people involved. But I would just like to say kudos, brava. It was a fabulously written piece. And I think you did a wonderful job. So that wasn't really where I was coming from. It was more in a general sense for the future. So please finish it. And I think it's marvelous.
Thank you. Gina.
So, commissioners, I will be quick. Emily, I trust you. I'm sure everybody on this Zoom does. So however you want to write that will work. And if you want to take that piece out or finesse it any way that you like, I will be the heavy. And I will go, as that's part of my job as a liaison to this commission, to get in front of council and have your back. So I want you to know that I don't feel as if we will be taking away services from anybody or denying anyone. And I have no problem taking that in front of council and discussing that in great detail. So Emily, finesse it however you and the commissioners would like. And I have all faith in all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the other thing I want to ask, I want to move on. And I want to move on, I'm sorry. I need to know, Ann, what happened for the status with the IT manager? Did you ever hear back from that person?
I have not.
Okay, and I'll get back to your question or your statement, whatever it was. And in the questions and answers from Tina Gray, it said that the walk in their mile shoes training was essentially going to come back in the fall. I don't think that ever happened. Do you know, Gina? Wait.
Didn't happen.
Okay, then I'm good. All right, Ann Seltzer, you wanted to say something.
Just one thing. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is we want the council to buy into the need for a DEI manager.
Correct.
Once they buy into it, they will assign the puzzle budget work to the city manager for him to figure out how to fund the position. So this is a persuasive, getting them to buy into it. Solving the budget, they will assign that to the city manager. So
I think that's a very helpful comment, Ann, and it leads me to thinking that rather than making the suggestion that we put in there for where they could get the money, that the better thing maybe to do is to just take it out and say,
Say you need a
you
full-time
figure
person.
out where to get the money. That's not our job. And how we got to this was that Gina had made some suggestions and thus we put it in there. But based upon this very, very helpful conversation, I'm just gonna take it out.
Yeah, just take it
Gina,
out.
if you're,
Take
yeah,
it
if
out.
Gina's gonna do it, then I don't need to do it. And this was all sort of like the backdrop for this, for how it became. And that's why it's really worth it to have a meeting and for me to raise the issue that I said we really needed to talk about,
Yeah.
which is we're asking for them to do this and do it right. Okay, they can figure out how to do it. I'm not a budget manager.
Yep.
I have enough trouble being a lawyer. Okay. Anybody have anything else on this topic? Okay, Ann Cowden.
Gina, would it be of any use if some of us attended the meeting when the discussion goes on?
Ann Seltzer.
I was going to mention this. You can mark your calendars that this report will be given to the city council via Zoom on February 15th at 7 o'clock. I will send all of you the link when we get closer to that date. And they will not be looking for other members of the commission to speak. Emily, Simon, and Anya will be doing the presentation and they will figure out how to divvy it up. The reason I think it's valuable for you guys to be on camera is so that the council sees these faces of people who have worked on this very important report, and you know that you are people, you are individuals, you aren't just some mysterious SERJ commission.
I second that completely. And I also want to make one other comment about that. There is public input for the city council. And Julie Gillis just said she'll be there. If you send in the request to give public forum, you can include in that request that you may want to be heard as to this agenda item. And then you can always decide not to speak. But then if there's something else that either Anya or I didn't emphasize, or you're hearing questions in a certain way, it does give us a backdrop of somebody additional being there. So even though it says public input is right in the beginning, you don't have to do it then. And in my testimony on creating this commission and on everything else, is I always waited until the city council went first, hit that agenda item, and then said, now I want my public forum. It's a very easy form. Ann.
I will say that it's possible after the presentation is given, certainly the council may ask questions of Emily and Anya, and as a courtesy and, you know, I don't know, good manners, they might say to the rest of you, do any of the rest of the commissioners have anything to add? So there's that possibility. But yes, you could submit something if you wanted to, but primarily it'll be Emily and Anya.
I don't think the council would ask to hear from everybody. I think it would just be Emily and Anya. But I love where you guys are coming from. It's going to be awesome. And this is something, remember, that the council wanted this. So let's do it.
They didn't want this, Gina. They wanted us to do it.
They wanted this. They wanted you. So here we are, and here you have it. And so
and they've had free labor, and it's time for that to end.
I applaud you. Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this? I will get this to Ann by the end of the day tomorrow, somehow, because I'm supposed to be leaving by tomorrow at noon. So I will get that to you, Ann, by tomorrow at noon. And after that, I have to be done. So whatever you do after that, whatever you guys do after that, whatever you people do, excuse me, would be great. I'm just making a few more edits and sending it. Okay, and then Anya, later you and I can work on stuff. Okay, all right, now the only thing, we have 10 minutes left. And okay, so my motion is, I have to make a motion. My motion is that at this point that we approve in substance the draft report that we have been discussing tonight with some additional edits that I will forward to Ann that can then become the final report that will be presented to the city council. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it. Oh, you have a lot of us.
Okay, is there any need for discussion on the motion? Right, all those in favor, say aye. Okay, anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. It will get to you, Ann.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, on our agenda, the next item, I believe, is Precious Yamaguchi and her terrific report that was done by her committee regarding the next steps with the public engagement. Precious, do you want to go ahead? And we are going to end at 6:30 as we are supposed to.
Sure, that's fine. I'll try to kind of zoom through our notes, and thank you for to Sherry for taking notes during our subcommittee, and for Julie. So we met about events and holidays that we might want to host, co-host, or celebrate, but we actually took a lot of dimensions of what the Events and Holidays Committee is and can be, looking at it from, well, which ones do we want to host and co-host? We really highlighted that the Southern Oregon Pride Parade would be a great way to create visibility of our commission and who we are, and introduce ourselves to the community, and as well as support and celebrate the Southern Oregon Pride. So that's something that we are trying to see if the rest of the commission is interested in doing and participating in. We also have another opening for a holiday or event that we would like to host or co-host or participate, and emphasizing that it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same way. It doesn't have to be a parade. We could participate through our various media outlets, whether it's like JPR, or do something through print media, or work with an organization or a church or mosque or any kind of affiliates, Southern Oregon University as well. Some of the events that came up were Indigenous Peoples Day, Juneteenth, and then also looking at maybe some smaller holidays or events that we can support or participate in, and maybe doing 2 events a year. That way we're not overwhelmed, but also can look towards the future years of doing 2 different events each year. So something that we could think about and talk about later. And then also another dimension of our committee that we discussed was, how do we as a commission get to know each other better through this time of the pandemic, where we haven't really had the opportunity to meet with each other in person. Typically through different cultures, we bond over through pathways of food, which is really hard during this time of the pandemic. So looking outward, but also looking inward as a committee, and how we get to know each other through events. And then another thing is to think about how we may want to document the events that we are attending or participating in. So we talked about the different events that we've participated in, ranging from MLK Day to the Ashland High School mural. But how do we actually inform each other, and possibly in the future, creating some kind of newsletter, seasonal newsletter, in which we collect these different artifacts, whether it's a paragraph of our description of where we've participated and what we've participated in, as well as photos. So that's something that we can also discuss. And then lastly, between that meeting, which was on Tuesday, our subcommittee meeting, and today, I was able to connect with Gina and Ann Seltzer about Southern Oregon University. So we have our vice president, Toya Cooper, but we also have a social justice and equity coordinator, which is more for student life, And they are coordinating a discussion that they want to invite our whole committee to. They're very, very excited about having our commission attend this event that is called This Is Us Conversation. This Is Us Conversation, and trying to have a regional dialogue about the divisiveness that we've witnessed within the last several years. And they are trying to be strategic. And when I say they, it's Marvin Woodward, who is the coordinator of the Social Justice and Equity Office, and Edward Deere, who is staff advisor, and then Erica Natsu is a instructor in communication, and they also have me as doing a small part in that. So Marvin, he wanted to have this event on April 7th because which is like the first Thursday of April, but the reason why he wanted to have it is so our whole commission could attend. But I talked with Ann and Gina about it, and then we realized that, we can't just like forgo a whole meeting. There's a lot of things that we do in these meetings. So Marvin is willing to move that whole date just to find a date that hopefully the majority of us can attend and be present. And the other audience would be like the Asian Student Union, Black Student Union, Latinx Student Union within SOU. They are wanting to reach out to OSF, Ashland Independent Film Festival, and then also the Medford Social Justice Equity, the Katie Commission. So they are really excited about having our commission attend that. And that's the main summary of what we discussed.
Thank you, Precious. That's a lot. Thank you. You all did a lot.
Wow, that was really good. Okay. One thing that's going to happen, Precious, thank you very much. We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to just say 2 other things. One of the things is that the new city manager is coming to our meeting in March, and we need to get questions. I had hoped that we could maybe brainstorm them tonight, but we don't have time. So if people could please, just think of any question that you would want to ask this dude, and send it to Ann. Then Ann can start collating them, and then we can do some work in between the actual meeting so that we can get them to him in advance, so he knows what we want to ask him. So I really hope that I'm going to even put a deadline date on that, and when you send it out, unless somebody wants to sort of take over on this and be the primary person to come up with the questions, that'd be great too. Other than me. Yes, Sherry Elson wanted to say something, and Ann Cowden wanted to say something. Sherry first, then Ann, just because that's what.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place to do it, if we can have a little bit more time, perhaps next month, to talk about some of the things that our subcommittee suggested, because we all as a group need to decide what we want to do and how we want to do it.
It will definitely be on for next time. We had to have a major discussion this time about the draft going to the city council.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And in fact, very much appreciated. Ann Cowden.
Ann Seltzer, would it be possible to get a copy of the new dude's resume so we kind of know what his background is that he's bringing to the city?
Yes,
Because we could form some of our questions around that and how his background might apply to the things that we're concerned with.
yes, I'm sure it's public record. I'm sure there's somewhere it's posted on the website and I can send the link.
Thank you.
Ann Cowden, I am going to take you up on your offer that you made in the beginning and nominate you, in fact, maybe appoint you to be the person to come up with the first set of questions for the dude, with enough time for us to review them beforehand, so that then the finals can get to Ann, and then that way it is in somebody's wheelhouse to do that job. Will you accept that?
I would be honored. And one thing I left out of who I am, my father was a city manager. So I grew up in a household of people asking, why didn't you pick up our garbage? And reading about my dad in the newspaper. So yes, I would be honored to do that.
Excellent. I think that would be very helpful for everybody. Okay, it's 6:31 and I want to end. I think we got through a real lot tonight, but are there any questions, comments, criticisms, kudos, complaints that somebody feels like that if they don't make, they're gonna bust? Because the last thing I want to do is lose any of you.
Kudos to a great productive meeting. What a great group of people to be able to work with. Thank you.
I agree. Good night, everybody. I hope to see as many of you as we can on the 17th. This is getting out tomorrow, Ann. Okay. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.